everyone, and welcome back to yet another part in this tutorial series. This is Daniel, and today we'll look at the eyes a little bit more. So in the last part I said that the mirror inside didn't quite work as expected, and I did figure out in the meantime what we could do to fix that, so let me quickly show you what I did there. So basically I turned I removed the mirror or let's put it this way. I made a copy, well, let me just demonstrate it to you, that's maybe easier. There is the mirror modifier, of course, and this is what we had before, so it was distorted in the wrong direction. It didn't go in, it went out instead. And that is because the UV coordinates are also, well, they're flipped in regards to the actual mesh. So that meant that when the texture would be shifted to the right, it would shift to the wrong direction on the geometry. So I've applied the modifier, and here you can see that the movement is in the wrong direction. So when I go from the front to the right, you see how this eye compared to this point shifts a bit to the back, but here it shifts in the wrong direction. So I just separated this into a separate mesh. So hit P, separate. Now we have two meshes. And then I had to do a little bit of a setup in the material. So the only way how I can make this behave differently with the same material on two objects is to use the object info node, and we can do this based on a few different sort of information bits that we receive. And the only one that I thought was, or the one that I thought was the most useful, was the pass index number. So on this new mesh, what I would do is I change the pass index to 1, and this number can now be received in the material in the object index. So on this object for the left eye, this index is at 0 because over here it's just set to 0, but on the right side this is set to 1. So I then remap this range, so I take the range from 0 to 1 and map it to -1 to 1. Well, you have to play around with the settings, but then basically all I do is, before, like previously, this was just connected to these other nodes. I just placed the scale vector node in between, which is the vector math node set to scale, just so you know. And sorry, let's delete that again. And that basically makes it so that this depth value for all these nodes is inverted on all objects that are set to 1. So that just means that all the objects that I do for this side will have to carry this set to 1, and the ones over here will leave it at 0. So yeah, that's the way I figured out for this here. In other applications like Unreal Engine, for example, you might do this with material instances, but Blender doesn't really have that concept in the same way, or at least you don't have exposed parameters or something like that. But in the end it worked out pretty well, and you can see here that we now have two nice looking eyes, and they have both some nice parallax so that they move in when they should, so we have this nice depth perception. Now today we're going to look at some more details. First of all, I'm actually curious if maybe, alright, the eye is deeper. Alright, that's good then. I was just wondering if we should maybe set this a little bit deeper after all. I'm going to try 0.2, and we'll set the ring around as well to the same number. I think maybe that's a little bit better. Then we could also change this up a little bit. Now I just realized that this is probably the exact same values. So what I'll do is just remove them over here and plug the same input to this node. That just makes it so that we don't have to change values in multiple places if we want to change the position of the eye, for example. Now I can just go in and adjust that a little bit so that this looks maybe a bit better now. Alright, okay. So here we have a new issue. I just realized that. We flipped the effect, but it was only flipped across one axis. So now the other side is, well, the wrong way around, so to say. So I didn't expect that, but it's pretty easy to fix. So instead of scaling this here, we're going to use a multiply vector node, and we're going to go to converter and use, I believe, combine x, y, z. And here we are going to use this result on x, I believe, and set the rest to 1. So if I'm correct, then now the eyes should behave as expected, and that looks alright. There we go. Now, finally, at the moment I think it's not too much of an issue, but just keep in mind we did this little masking thing with the texture. So where is it actually? So right, I believe that if you don't want the eye to stick out of the shape, you'd have to plug this in here instead. Now this gets cut off like this, instead of allowing the eye to go on top. So this is like a little setting that you have to choose, whatever you prefer. Maybe this is better. I think like if you really go deep with this, you will probably want to have it this way. And in fact, I think I'm going to keep it for now like this too, so that when we do things like moving the eye around a little bit later, that we can just yeah, looks a bit weird right now, but so that we can do things like that easily. Yeah, okay, I think you get the point. So that's done. Anyway, it's good to have this here. Or should we just remove it for now? I don't want to get things complicated, so I'll remove it for now. But should we want to turn this back to that effect? We can do it at any time. So next then we want to add a little bit of a well, is this the iris, or is well, whatever, you know, the part in the middle of the eye that's dark. That's the next part we want to do, and we should try to manage this a little bit better now. That does sound like a good idea. So what do we have here? This is the shading, and this is the shader setup itself. Let's just move it apart. Can we do some comments here? Frame, okay, we'll use a frame for these. I'm not used to using these frames very much, so yeah. Can we get text onto this? It's okay, so this is the shadows. This is going to be the shading. Not really sure what to call this, but anyway, it's nice to have it at least in a group so that we can see it. And finally, this was the outline, I believe, based on that color. So so here's the background of the eye, and here maybe we should just do it like so. Just so that we can see where the important bits are. So this is the eye background. Then we have let's call it eye gradient. This is the eye outline. So basically we're just going to go almost like a staircase down here further and further and add more elements to it, but the layering will become more and more important as we go down there, because for example a highlight should be on top of everything. You wouldn't want the outline to be on top of a highlight, so yeah, that's something to keep in mind. So in this next element now, we will set up the inner part first, but then we will put a layer behind it. The reason why I do it in this order is because it would be nice to see the center before we do the shading in the background. But just keep in mind that we'll probably do like another node here. We didn't need that. Another node here, but then we'll probably do another node here in between. So I'm just leaving a little bit space there for now. And here we will need another one of these modules actually also. Let's put this in between here, so it's a bit nicer organized. And we could start to use groups for this, but the reason why I'm not doing this at the moment is because I'm not sure right away what kind of requirements I have to my group. So as you can see here, we use a greater than threshold, here we use a color ramp, and if I was to include this in a group, then yeah, that would be sort of fixed. And I mean, if I was to instance it, of course. So I'm thinking of doing that later, so then it's not about, I don't have to limit myself in that way. Alright, so we'll just copy this for now. Get another block down here. We'll need to take this same coordinate input here, put it there, and just get this signal into our factor like this. And this is not going to be the outline, that's the, I think it's called pupil, but it's a bit confusing either way. Oh, how did it now snap to? So that's how it works. I've never used these frames. Can I somehow snap this around here? I have no idea. Oh, now it did snap onto that. Nice. Let's maybe do it in this way. Alright, so here we have our pupil, and that will just temporarily plug it into here, and just make sure you don't get anything there. Is that a good idea? Let's undo it for a second. Maybe we can directly plug it into there. That should be better. So what else do we have to plug in here? I feel like we're missing something, which is the mapping. And so here we're once again going to just take this node, because this is the position of the eye. So if we scale the eye, I do want to reuse this. I might replace this later down the line when I go and sort of optimize it, because I would like to be able to adjust the size of the pupil by itself. So that's just something to keep in mind, that probably we're going to do some parameter setup where this is all calculated nicely. But for now, just to keep it simple, this is going to be the same setting, and here we have now the ability to you know, adjust the size and position. And of course we don't want an outline, just a point, and we can do something like this. And of course this is going to go on top of what we have already, so we just take this into here, and that's going to be on top. Now we do have the option, of course, to shift the depth of that, and this is going to be a place where it's really going to show the benefit of having this offset, and just make sure that it's not able to go outside of this in any place. In some positions it might look a little bit weird in these extreme angles, but it looks pretty good actually. Looks really like it has a lot of depth to it, and I like that effect a lot. Yeah, the only little complaint that I have maybe is that from the front view this is already at an angle, so it kind of pushes itself to the inside, which could be a good thing, but I mean, you might have to manually push it out again, so that it's not even like the downwards angle, so it's already pushing itself in sort of a weird position just because of the angle of the geometry. So So maybe we'll do, it's good that I'm seeing this now. This is sort of the exploration process in itself. But it tells me that maybe we'll need to have a parameter with which we can adjust sort of the default angle, so we can shift the angle, the default angle, to be forward instead of in this direction. Because if we look from this side, this is now the perfect centered angle. But here we get a little bit of an offset already. Either way, maybe that's a good thing. It just looks either way. And let's see. We could try something like this as well. I have some more reference images available here, and I see that they do something like this, where this part has a little bit of an outline as well. We could just try to fake it here with here the value, but we might go back here and just fill it in or do something else. Anyway, that's the place where we can adjust it. So this is what we'll do for now. Now here it's going to go, it's going to be all a bit interesting now. Because now we want to do the shadow that's in the back here, and it's a bit of a tricky shape. And that will go in here in between so that this is on top. So I'm going to leave a little bit more space. And let's make a copy of that to here. So this is going to be the gradient shadow or something. Not really sure. And we'll need to reuse this as well, I believe. Let me just quickly check what that is. Actually, I have to, that's what this is for. iGradient, okay. That's exactly what I need. So, first of all, let's get this setup copied to down here. Let's, as usual, plug in the inputs that we need. This goes to the first, this goes to the second. And you know, thinking about it, it would probably be nicer if we keep this in the same alignment instead of indenting it every time, so then it's easier to see where this goes and where that goes. It's really just these two nodes that we need to plug into everything. And this one belongs to here, so it would be nice to line these up. We can even do something like this, select all of these, and I believe there is a node line something, a line feature. I've never used the line tool, so I'm not even sure if they exist, but pretty sure they do. Well, how could I find that? Maybe F3 align. I don't know. Oh, so apparently you can scale it. So if I hit S and then X, you can scale it to 0 like this. But that would give you the ability to sort of align them all at once to the same position. And if you want, you could bring these together as well, but I feel like, although maybe it's easier to see it this way. Just a little bit of cleanup work. And hopefully this is a little bit easier to overlook now. This is the coloring of that, and this is the vectors. Alright, so what we have down here at the moment is just the inner part of the eye, I believe, so we should see this. And now I want to give it, I want to subtract something from it. So this is going to be quite a bit of a setup with many nodes, I feel, but wait, is that the right one? No, we are looking at that here. So basically we take this output and no, sorry, we have to take both of these, copy them down, and instead of directly plugging this into there, we'll use in between another vector mapping node like so, and then we'll use color mix RGB and subtract this from that and set that to 1, of course. Now it's going to be black because we subtract the same thing from each other, like 1 minus 1 is 0, of course. But now if we start to shift this in some direction, you get sort of part of that. You can even scale it like so, which is very useful, and that's going to be the first part of the shaded area up here. But then I also want a little bit more around the inner part. So I think for this we'll copy, actually we can just copy the same thing again. We'll plug this in as is. And this time I'm going to reuse that node, but this time I'm going to set this to add. And also we can just set this to clamp every time, just so that the values are properly clipped. Set the factor to 1, and here we add something to it, but this time it's only going to add here in the center. And I hope you can see what we're trying to do here. This is the shape that I was looking for. Make sure it's sort of in the right position. We can actually even go ahead and well, we would need to copy this to down here and give it a separate depth so that the inner part can be at a little bit of a different depth than the rest. So here we take this and plug into here, and we'll need the other node's output for that. And now instead of using this, we'll use that instead. That wasn't the right node, was it? I should go to here. So now we have a new slider for the depth. Wait, so we broke something different. What did we break? Is that connected to the right thing? Maybe it isn't. No. This is connected to the wrong. We take this and this goes into here. That goes into there. Seems like now we have it in the right position. So now we can still doesn't look quite right, does it? So this is going to the upper one. This is still connected to the lower one, so this is supposed to be that one. Here, I believe. Did I completely flip it all? I'm so confused. Maybe we should just bring these more apart so that we can clearly see the difference. The first node needs to connect to the first module. The second node connects to the second module. So what do we have here? I have a feeling we have the opposite. Why did we even change this? This was the one that's done. Oh no. This is the... Yeah, this is correct. So this one goes to here. That's correct, but this one is not correct. Alright, lots of confusion, but I think we have it now. That looks correct. And now we should be able to just slightly adjust this further to the back so that, you know, we have a little bit more of a depth perception here. Just let's not overdo it, just a tiny bit, so that that looks a bit nicer. But I hope to make it so that this doesn't happen too much. So we can avoid it just by adjusting this to be large enough and by making sure that it's... I mean, if you want, you can push it around a little bit as well. But I want to leave it in the center. Maybe we can instead push this down a little bit further. And so next, now this is like hard edges, of course, but we do want this to be soft. Now, let's take a look at what would happen if we just use the gradients instead of the greater than node, and what was if we connected that to here. Alright, it is not that easy apparently. Wait, let's take a look. So we'll put a reroute node in here so that's easier to manage. Then let's take a look one more time at this first. So here is our first gradient, and what happens if you subtract a second gradient from that? Here we go. Seems like this logic doesn't really work out, does it? I really wish there was a nice, easy way to blur something, but that is not really a thing, unfortunately. What did I do? There we go. So, you know what? I think I have to think a little bit more about this. I didn't think that far ahead. Thought this would work out. So for now, we're just going to stick to hard edges, and I'll try to figure out how I can make this soft. I mean, the easiest way for us to do it right now would be to just plug this in instead, and to use here a soft gradient. And yeah, here you can now select this. Maybe actually that's the way to go. I'm talking as if I'd given up and then I figure it out in the right moment. And here basically we do the same thing. We just make this soft and add it to here. Try to get the gradient right. That's going to be it pretty much. So this is the shadow mask that we need for what I'm planning here. Now we just need to plug it in to the system. So this is going to go into the factor. We'll connect this to here, and this goes down to there without that. This needs to plug into our output. So the color is of course still wrong, and you can see many things are kind of not working out as they should. First of all, for this gradient shadow now, I want to set this to, or try to set it to multiply at least. Maybe we'll change it as well, but let's see. And change a different color here. Just a little bit of a darker effect, like so. And we should just check quickly what this looks like without the last node. So something is not behaving quite correctly here. I do want to check this node one more time, because we probably have a little mistake in our setup. It could be that it's just the parallax that's messing it up. So for now I'll try to set this to the same, so that this is more like a texture rather than some fancy depth effect. Let's just do something like so. Now the entire thing has a little bit of a depth, but it's not going to sort of interpolate between the different elements anymore. And alright, so this now works out somewhat. And now hopefully we can just put the last element on top, like so. And alright, so this goes behind it for some reason. Now let me figure out why that is. Maybe the clamping is something we should do on all of these nodes actually, just to keep the values nicely within this. I'm not doing any sort of calculation that would require me to have those values in these situations. Yeah, and I think the only reason we can see it is because of the half transparency here. So we're just going to remove this one here, and this should now go on top. Now, of course, I believe that the last issue now is that, of course, this is sliding too much in the back, but we want the shadow to sort of align to that. So what we need to do is to set this lower element also to that same number. And now we can see that it works as expected, although, well, there's still a little bit of work to do maybe with the gradient. And we could maybe try to set this also to something a little bit higher so that it moves together. But the thing with this one is that, yeah, I think I have an idea for this. Basically what we want is that the inside here moves as much as the pupil, but the outside needs to move at the speed of the eye itself, so we need to have like a spherical transition, a gradient between those two sides. The good thing is we can plug in here something like that. And if you remember, we have basically exactly that in here. So I'll try to make a copy of this, put it up here. It's quite hard to position now. Put it like so maybe. And the first node goes into the upper one, the second one goes into the lower one, like so. Hope I'm correct about this. And let's just take a look at our output. So this is now a gradient. Then next, let's see, I don't want to have the parallax on this though. Or do we? Maybe we actually do. So I'll keep it like this for now, and we have a gradient here. Now we just need to map the values correctly. So I'm going to use a map range node. Converter map range, and we need to get these values right now. So we need to check the threshold here. I believe that this is the threshold that we need to start at. So from this to 1. So now we have the eye shape. It's giving us a nice gradient from black to white in this. And the output should be, as you can see here, from 0.2 to 0.4, I believe. So we'll try to do 0.2 on the outside and 0.4 on the inside. So it's going to be barely visible. But if I'm correct, we just need to plug this into here now. And it should just work. Now it's probably not going to work on the first time, is it? But let's just hope for the best. And actually, it kind of seems to work. So the inside sort of moves faster than the outside. We can check that maybe a little bit better if we play around with the values here, the mapping range. If we just increase this to 1, then the inside should move even faster, and it kind of does so. So I believe we kind of pulled it off. I'm still a bit confused about where this comes from, so I'm going to look a little bit into that, analyze it a bit more. But there we go, we have our shadow. Now we definitely need to do some more adjusting on all of this. But yeah, we're in the middle of developing complicated shader, so it's just taking some time. But then, you know, I feel like it's also a good experience for you guys to see this, because I feel like most people who teach shaders online, they just show you sort of the final result or tell you exactly the steps to get the result. But in my case, I'm just recording as I make this, which I don't know if that's the good thing or a bad thing, but I hope you like it anyway. Should we just do one last element? I feel like we should just add a little bit of a spotlight onto this. Basically, this is going to be set to add. Actually, there's one little issue with this now. We're doing the shading here, so actually let's bring the shading back. So we just plug this into there, and the highlight needs to go on top of that. I should go here, of course. So the highlight needs to go on top of everything, even, and now that I think about it, the outline shouldn't really be shaded. So yeah, that's the thing with all the layering that makes it all a bit complicated. See, at the moment the outline also gets a bit of a shadow. Well, we'll ignore that for now and fix that a bit later, but just to get the highlight at least on the right layer, we need to add it after here. Which means that we need a color RGB mix node. Let's create a new one, color mix RGB. Nope, not this one. Let's undo that again. Color mix RGB. We'll add and just add white to it. And here in the factory we'll plug in now our new element. So now we just need to get the shape right. As usual, we'll need our second output here for the second node and the first one for the first node. Let's just plug this back in. And then we take a mapping node that we already have, many of them, and sort of position our highlight wherever it needs to go. And we could place it just here. And of course it's flipped, but we'll fix that in a second. Also, if you want to change the size of it, you can do that just here. Let's make it a bit smaller. And also this is very important, for the depth of it, we want to use actually a negative value, so that it really feels like it's on top of everything, like so. And in fact, I think maybe we don't want to shift it too much. So maybe let's try something like 0.1, minus 0.1 here. So then it really gets shifted around depending on the angle. Well, it is a bit in the way though, isn't it? So let's go a bit higher though. Yeah, especially from the front view, it needs to be in the right spot. And so now for the other side, basically this is the only case where we don't want this node basically in between. So is that right? Yeah, so basically I'm going to take this one and plug it into here instead. So that should make it... no, I'm sorry. This is not quite it. This is not quite it. This would just reverse the direction of the where it's shifted to. So that's correct, but we need to use... so let's do it this way. Can be at 1. We'll use a vector. How can we create a vector easily? It's just a value. Right. Converter, combine XYZ. This one goes into here. Actually, we can copy these values. 0.25 minus 0.22. And this would go directly into here, but in between I'm just going to add a vector math node, and we will set this to scale, and here we'll get our output from here where we have a 1 or minus 1, and this should make it work now. This just needs to go into the scale. Alright, so we have a similar issues to before again. So x-axis of course worked, but we only want to flip it in one direction. So that's the same thing we actually did wrong before. So actually maybe we can just use... we need to set that to multiply and plug in that particular node instead. Just like before, basically. And there we go. Kind of. I mean, it does what I was thinking, what I wanted it to do, but I think the issue here is now that these have like already an angle. They're not facing to the front, and so they behave quite differently in that direction. So this is something we can only fix later a little bit with a little bit of a change in the setup that I'm going to make, where we have the ability to sort of set a default angle and set that to the front rather than in the direction of the eye. But regardless, I think the result is pretty good looking, like the eyes are really alive. If you compare that to before, what we had, where it was all just flat, projected onto the surface, I think that this is a lot better. And this video is getting long, isn't it? We could make a few fine adjustments now, bring in a little bit more white, for example. Could try to saturate the yellow a little bit more in the middle, and also of course in the back. I also feel like this shading that we did here is now just set to a color, but we could as well do similarly something like here. We just take the same gradient and plug it into here, but we adjust the colors now. So let's take this color actually, not the alpha of course, the color, and here we plug in this darker value. You can put it even here, but then this one should be a bit brighter. And so that is a little bit of a nicer looking variation of that. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for the eyes for now. I think it's a very interesting, unique technique that I haven't seen used too much, and at the same time I think that it has a lot of potential. It really gives you the ability to create eyes that really look alive and aren't too plain. And I hope we can polish this a little bit more. We also need to think about ways to allow sort of blinking animations and different expressions with the eyes. It's going to be a bit tricky, but it's a good start, and we'll continue to look into this. Yeah, pretty happy actually with the result. Alright, I'm kind of happy we got this over with, because that was really difficult. I was very worried that it wouldn't work out, but it seemed to just work fine. Maybe we have to turn down the saturation a bit after all. They're almost glowing at the moment, the eyes, but maybe that's a good thing as well. Still need to add the shadow in the back here as well. Sort of an ambient occlusion for the eye outside here. But otherwise it looks pretty nice. But I hope you're not too exhausted, and we'll continue in a few days, I hope, for you at least. So see you soon, talk to you next time, and hope you enjoyed.